My stepdaughter's birth mom ignored her medical needs, sending her to the ER, then filed fake abuse reports against me. When I begged her to stop, she smirked and said, "You're traumatizing her, not me." I walked away. That was 2 years ago. But today, she can't hurt us anymore. When I met my husband Jack, I thought him being a single father was a green flag, because his daughter Lucy was 6 and very well taken care of. It was obvious that Jack spent more money on her than he spent on himself, so getting married seemed like a no-brainer. I myself was infertile, so helping to take care of his daughter was more of a gift than a burden. Even when she ended up in hospital with a feeding tube shoved down her throat, or vomited all over her clothes for 2 days straight, I always took it as an opportunity for us to become closer, because she had gastroparesis, which is basically a condition where the stomach muscles don't function as they should. It was something she had struggled with since birth, but that didn't stop me from loving her any less. In fact, there was only one thing I truly hated about her, and that was her birth mom, Becky. Up until our wedding, Becky was completely out of the picture. Jack hadn't even heard from her since the custody hearing 3 years prior, and according to him, halfway through the court case, she threw her hands up and said, "Just effing take her," before walking out and awarding him with full custody. He promised he was done with her, and I believed him, until one day on Lucy's 7th birthday party, when Becky showed up out of nowhere. We hosted it in our local Chuck E. Cheese, and invited her whole class. But when we showed up early to make sure everything was set up, Becky reared her ugly head out of nowhere. "Long time no see," she screamed at the top of her lungs, before wrapping her hands around my husband's face. "Mommy!" Lucy yelled before jumping into her arms. I turned my head to face Jack, whose face filled with terror and fear. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice shaking. That's when Becky pulled his hand into another room to talk. Meanwhile, I made sure to keep Lucy entertained with the silly bands I always kept in my pocket. When they got back, Jack told me that Becky would be staying with us to celebrate her birthday. Panic filled my body, but I knew the day wasn't about me or Becky. It was about Lucy, so I just bit my tongue and let her celebrate with us. But the next day, Jack and I talked about it. He told me that even just the thought of being around Becky repulsed him, but he thinks it would be good for Lucy to spend time with her. So I agreed. Until one day, when Lucy spent the day at mini golf with Becky, because when she got home, she spent the entire night vomiting into a bowl. She tried to convince me that it was just a stomach bug, but after some light interrogation, she finally told me the truth. She had eaten spicy food. Rage boiled my blood. I had made it crystal clear how important her dietary precautions are, and texted her a list of foods that Lucy had to stay away from, as well as a photo of the menu from where they were going, where I circled everything she was allowed to eat. I immediately ran to Jack, expecting him to go no contact with Becky. He called her straight away, but instead of blocking her on everything, he hung up the phone and tried to convince me it was just a misunderstanding, that Becky just needed some time to adjust to mothering again. I pinched the bridge of my nose, because even though I wasn't her biological mother, I knew what was best for her. After all, I was the one who had spent countless hours with her at the hospital, the one who held her hair back and wiped her tears as she vomited all night. But I wanted to show him that I trusted his judgment as a father, so I let him win the battle. As soon as Lucy got better, she asked if I would finally take her to the all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant on Ocean Drive. So I did what I always do when Lucy asks me to do things that her doctor has warned against. I lied. I told her that it was illegal for anyone under the age of 16 to go in. Well, a few weeks later, Becky the Betch had planned to spend time with her again. This time, I specifically told her not to bring her to the all-you-can-eat sushi. I texted it to her on every media platform, handed her a piece of paper with the instruction written on it, made sure to say it in front of Jack, everything. That evening, 2 hours after Lucy was supposed to be home, I got the call. But it wasn't from Becky the Betch. It was our local hospital. They told me Lucy had been found collapsed in the hallway completely alone, practically on the verge of death. I could hear my pulse beating in my temples. Me and Jack Speed drove there, where we found Lucy hooked up to monitors and drips. The nurses told me they had run tests on her vomit and saw that she had eaten sushi. I cried out while Jack held me, trying to get into contact with Becky the Betch. But of course, she had blocked us on everything. Well, she was about to face my motherly wrath, LOL. 2 months later, with a fake account on Instagram, I saw that she was forced to move to a much lower income neighborhood, because we worked for the same bank chain, except I was higher up. So I texted her supervisor and had her fired. I thought it was over. But on Lucy's 9th birthday, we woke up to a gift at the door from Becky the Beach. It was CPS. The social worker stood there with a clipboard and a stern face. She told us they received an anonymous tip about child neglect. My hands started shaking. Jack went pale. We let them in because we had nothing to hide. The worker looked around our house and asked Lucy some questions. Lucy told them everything was fine and that she loved living with us. After an hour of questions and checking our home, the worker left. She said everything looked good, but they'd be back for a follow-up visit. I knew it was Becky. Who else would do this? Jack finally saw what I'd been trying to tell him. He was furious. He called his lawyer that same day. The lawyer told us to document everything, so I started keeping records of every single thing. Every text, every interaction, everything. 2 weeks later, CPS showed up again. This time they had more specific allegations. They said someone reported that Lucy wasn't getting proper medical care for her condition. I showed them all her medical records, her appointment schedules, her medication logs, everything I'd been keeping track of for years. The worker seemed satisfied but warned us that they had to investigate all reports. This happened 3 more times over the next month, each time with different allegations. Lucy was being homeschooled without proper education. Lucy was being isolated from other children. Lucy was being given inappropriate medication. All lies, all from anonymous tips. But I knew who it was. Jack's lawyer said we needed proof it was Becky making the false reports. Without proof, we couldn't do anything. So I got creative. I set up a fake social media account and started following Becky's friends. One of them, Nicole, posted everything about her life online, including screenshots of text conversations. And there it was, a screenshot of Becky bragging about calling CPS on us. I took screenshots of everything, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted her to know how it felt. So I started my own campaign. First, I found out where she worked now, some small retail store downtown. I went in as a customer a few times, watched her routine, learned her schedule. Then I started leaving anonymous reviews about terrible customer service. Not enough to get her fired right away, just enough to get her manager watching her closely. Next, I found her apartment complex's Facebook group. I joined with a fake profile and started asking innocent questions, like if anyone else had issues with loud music from apartment 3B, or if anyone else noticed strange smells coming from that unit. Other residents started chiming in with their own complaints. Soon, Becky had multiple noise complaints filed against her. Then came the parking situation. I noticed she always parked in the same spot even though it wasn't assigned. So I casually mentioned in the Facebook group how some people were taking spots that weren't theirs. The apartment management sent out a warning letter to all residents, Becky's car got towed twice in 1 week for parking violations, but I wasn't done yet. I found out she was dating someone new, some guy named Russell who worked at a car dealership. I created another fake profile, this time as a concerned citizen. I messaged him saying I recognized his girlfriend from my workplace, that she had been fired for theft, that I just wanted to warn him. He never responded, but Becky's relationship status changed to single a week later. Jack didn't know about any of this. He was focused on the legal side, trying to get a restraining order, but the judge said mean texts and false CPS reports weren't enough for a restraining order. We needed proof of physical threats or actual harm, so we were stuck. Meanwhile, Lucy was getting worse, not physically, but emotionally. The constant CPS visits were scaring her. She started having nightmares. She asked me if she was going to be taken away. I held her and promised her that would never happen, but inside I was terrified. What if one of these false reports stuck? What if some social worker believed Becky's lies? I couldn't let that happen. I had to protect my family, even if it meant getting my hands dirty. I started documenting everything Becky did, every time she drove past our house, every fake social media account she made to watch us. I even installed cameras around our property. Jack thought I was being paranoid, but I knew better. One night I caught her on camera sitting in her car outside our house at 2 a.m., just watching. I showed Jack the footage and he finally agreed we needed to do more. The next week, Lucy had a doctor's appointment. Her gastroparesis was acting up again. The doctor wanted to adjust her medication. As we were leaving the hospital, I spotted Becky in the parking lot. She was taking photos of us with her phone. I confronted her right there, told her to leave us alone. She just laughed and said she had every right to be in a public place. I wanted to grab her phone and smash it, but I knew that would only make things worse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how to make this stop. Jack was useless. He just kept saying we should let the lawyers handle it, but the lawyers weren't doing anything. They said we didn't have enough evidence. Meanwhile, Lucy was suffering. She barely wanted to leave the house anymore. She was scared Becky would show up. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called my friend Jean, who worked at the DMV, asked her to look up Becky's information. I know it wasn't exactly legal, but I was desperate. Jean gave me Becky's new address and license plate number. Now I could track her better. I started following Becky on my days off, not in a creepy way, just keeping tabs on her routine. She worked at that retail store from 9 to 5, had lunch at the same sandwich shop every day, went to the gym 3 times a week. I learned everything about her schedule. Knowledge is power, right? One day while following her, I saw her meet up with someone at a coffee shop. It was a woman I didn't recognize. They sat in the corner booth talking for over an hour. Becky kept showing her something on her phone. The woman was taking notes. I had a bad feeling about this. My instincts were right. 2 days later, we got served with papers. Becky was trying to get visitation rights. She claimed we were alienating her from Lucy, that we were poisoning Lucy against her biological mother. The papers said she had been attending parenting classes and therapy, that she was ready to be in Lucy's life again. Jack panicked. He called his lawyer immediately. The lawyer said we'd have to go to family court, that a judge would decide if Becky deserved visitation. I felt sick. After everything she'd done, she might actually get to see Lucy again, legally this time. I wasn't going to let that happen. I called the woman from the coffee shop. Turns out she was a family law paralegal named Susan. Becky had hired her to help with the visitation case. I pretended to be a potential client and pumped her for information. She let slip that Becky had been documenting everything too. Every time we denied her access to Lucy, every nasty text I'd sent her. This was war now. I hired a private investigator named Jeffrey, told him to dig up everything on Becky, her work history, her relationships, her finances, everything. It cost me $3,000 from my personal savings. Jack didn't need to know about that. Jeffrey was good. Within a week, he had a full report. Becky had been fired from 4 jobs in the past 2 years. She had 2 DUIs on her record from before Lucy was born. She'd been evicted from her last apartment for not paying rent. She was drowning in credit card debt. This was gold. But the best part was her social media. Jeffrey found old posts where she talked about not wanting kids, posts where she called Lucy a mistake, screenshots of her telling friends she was glad to be rid of the responsibility. I printed everything out, made copies. This was my ammunition. The court date was set for next month. I spent every free moment preparing. I organized all the medical records showing how Lucy's condition worsened every time she saw Becky. I had statements from Lucy's doctors about the importance of her diet. I had the security footage of Becky stalking our house. I was ready. But Becky wasn't sitting idle either. She started showing up at Lucy's school, not going inside, just standing across the street. The principal called us concerned. We told them about the situation and they increased security. But it rattled Lucy. She started having panic attacks about going to school. Then Becky escalated. She somehow got Lucy's phone number, started texting her directly, telling her how much she missed her, how mean we were for keeping them apart, how she was her real mom and I was just a replacement. Lucy showed me the messages crying. I blocked the number, but Becky just got new ones. Jack wanted to go to the police, but they said texts from a mother to her child weren't harassment, even if the mother had abandoned that child, even if the child didn't want contact. The system was broken and Becky knew how to work it. I had to get creative again. I reached out to Becky's ex-boyfriends, found 3 of them on social media. 2 wouldn't talk to me, but one, Willie, was happy to spill everything. He told me about Becky's drinking problem, her violent temper, how she'd thrown a glass at him during an argument. He even had photos of the bruises she'd given him. He agreed to write a statement for court. Meanwhile, the CPS visits continued. They were clearly getting tired of the false reports, but had to investigate each one. The latest claim was that we were medically abusing Lucy by making up her gastroparesis. Even with all her medical records, they had to do a full investigation. Lucy had to miss school for more doctor appointments to prove she actually had the condition. I was at my breaking point. This woman was ruining our lives and the system was letting her. Jack was stress eating and had gained 20 pounds. Lucy was having nightmares every night. I wasn't sleeping. We were all falling apart. Then Becky made a mistake. She showed up at Lucy's dance recital. We didn't even know how she found out about it. She sat in the back row filming everything. When Lucy saw her, she froze on stage, forgot all her moves, ran off crying. The other parents were staring. It was humiliating. I confronted Becky in the parking lot, told her she was traumatizing her own daughter. She laughed and said I was the one traumatizing Lucy by keeping her from her real mother. That's when I snapped. I didn't hit her, but I wanted to. Instead, I told her exactly what I thought of her, called her every name in the book, said she was a pathetic excuse for a mother, that Lucy was better off without her. She recorded the whole thing on her phone. Of course she did. Now she had evidence of me being hostile and aggressive. Her lawyer would love that. I knew I'd messed up, but I couldn't help it. She brought out the worst in me. The stress was affecting my work too. I made mistakes on important accounts. My boss pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I broke down and told him everything. He was sympathetic, but said I needed to get it together. The bank couldn't afford errors like that. That's when I realized Becky was winning. She was destroying us bit by bit, death by 1,000 cuts, and she was enjoying every minute of it. I saw her posts on social media through my fake accounts. Inspirational quotes about fighting for what's yours. Photos of her at the gym with captions about getting stronger for her daughter. She was painting herself as the victim. 3 weeks before the court date, disaster struck. Lucy had a severe gastroparesis flare-up. We rushed her to the emergency room. She was dehydrated and her potassium was dangerously low. They admitted her for observation. She needed IV fluids and monitoring. Somehow Becky found out. She showed up at the hospital demanding to see Lucy. The nurses didn't know about the situation and almost let her in. I had to cause a scene to stop her. Security got involved. Becky claimed she had a right to see her sick daughter, that we were keeping her from Lucy during a medical emergency. The hospital social worker got involved, asked us about the family dynamics. I explained everything, but Becky had her own version. She said we were denying her access to her child, that she just wanted to make sure Lucy was okay. The social worker said they'd have to note the incident in Lucy's file. Lucy was in the hospital for 3 days. Becky camped out in the waiting room the entire time. Every time we walked past, she was there, watching, waiting. The nurses started giving us updates in a private room so we wouldn't have to see her. When Lucy was discharged, Becky followed us home. Not closely enough for the police to call it stalking, just enough to let us know she was there. She parked down the street and sat in her car for hours. Jack wanted to confront her, but I said no. She was trying to provoke us, trying to get more evidence for court. I started researching Becky's family, found out her mother lived 2 states away. I called her pretending to be an old friend. The woman was lovely but had some choice words about her daughter. Said Becky had always been selfish, that she'd warned her about having a baby she didn't want, that she wasn't surprised when Becky abandoned Lucy. I convinced her to write a letter for court. She agreed, saying maybe it would finally make Becky face reality. The letter was brutal, detailed how Becky had been irresponsible her whole life, how she'd abandoned pets, friendships, everything when it got too hard, how she'd said multiple times she never wanted Lucy. But Becky had been busy too. She'd gotten letters from her parenting class instructor, from her therapist, from her current employer saying she was a model employee. She'd even volunteered at a children's charity to make herself look good. She was building a case that she changed. 2 weeks before court, things got worse. Someone called my job claiming to be from the IRS, said they were investigating me for tax fraud. My boss had to get involved. It took days to prove it was a false claim, but the damage was done. My reputation at work was tainted. Then our car tires were slashed. We couldn't prove it was Becky, but who else would it be? Jack installed more security cameras, but she was too smart to get caught on film. She knew exactly where the blind spots were. Lucy was barely functioning. She wouldn't eat, scared it would make her sick again. She was losing weight. Her doctor was concerned. We had to start talking about a feeding tube again, all because of the stress Becky was causing. I was done playing nice. I called Jeffrey, the private investigator, again, told him to dig deeper, find something that would end this once and for all. He said he'd need more money. I emptied my savings account, gave him everything I had. He found pay dirt. Becky had been arrested 5 years ago for check fraud. The charges were dropped, but the arrest record was there. She'd also been sued by a former roommate for destroying property. And best of all, she'd lost custody of another child, a son she'd had as a teenager. He was living with his paternal grandparents in another state. I tracked down those grandparents. They were happy to talk. Said Becky had abandoned their grandson when he was 2, just left him with them one day and never came back. They'd been raising him ever since. They agreed to provide a statement for court about Becky's pattern of abandoning children. But when I told Jack what I'd found, he got upset. Said I was going too far, that we should just focus on our own evidence. We had our first real fight about it. He accused me of being obsessed. I accused him of not protecting Lucy. We slept in separate rooms that night. The stress was tearing us apart. Exactly what Becky wanted. She was destroying our family without even having to see Lucy. It was psychological warfare, and she was winning. 1 week before court, Becky pulled her biggest stunt yet. She showed up at my work, caused a scene in the lobby, claimed I'd been harassing her, that I'd hired people to stalk her, that I was trying to ruin her life. Security had to escort her out, but everyone saw, everyone heard. My boss called me into his office, said this drama was affecting the workplace, that if it continued, they'd have to let me go. I begged him to understand, explained the situation. He gave me one more chance, but said any more incidents and I was done. I went home and cried. Really cried for the first time since this all started. Jack found me on the bathroom floor and just held me. We both knew we couldn't keep living like this. Something had to give. That's when Lucy came to us. Said she wanted to write a letter to the judge. We tried to talk her out of it, not wanting to put that pressure on her, but she insisted. Said she had things she needed to say. Her letter was heartbreaking. She wrote about how scared Becky made her, how she had nightmares about being forced to eat foods that would make her sick, how she just wanted to feel safe again. She begged the judge not to make her see Becky. I made copies of that letter, sent one to our lawyer, kept one in our safe, put one in my purse. That letter was our nuclear option. No judge could read that and give Becky visitation, right? 3 days before court, Becky made one last play. She filed an emergency motion claiming we were coaching Lucy, that we were emotionally abusing her by turning her against her mother. She wanted an immediate custody evaluation. Our lawyer said not to worry, that emergency motions rarely worked, but I wasn't taking any chances. I gathered every piece of evidence we had, organized it all in a binder. Medical records, text messages, security footage, witness statements, everything. The night before court, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just kept going over everything in my head. What if the judge sided with Becky? What if they gave her visitation? What if Lucy had to spend weekends with someone who didn't care about her medical needs? Jack tried to reassure me, said we had a strong case, that no judge would ignore Lucy's condition, but I'd lost faith in the system that let Becky harass us for months. That made us prove over and over that we were good parents while she got to play the victim. I made a decision that night. If the court failed us, I would protect Lucy myself, whatever it took. I'd quit my job and homeschool her, move to another state if necessary, change our names, anything to keep her safe from Becky. The morning of court arrived. Lucy was too anxious to go to school, so we let her stay home with my mother. We dressed in our best clothes, looked like the responsible parents we were. I put Lucy's letter in my purse along with photos of her in the hospital. At the courthouse, Becky was already there, dressed conservatively, hair pulled back, looking every bit the reformed mother. She'd brought her lawyer Susan and what looked like a dozen character witnesses. She smiled at us, actually smiled. Our lawyer pulled us aside, said Becky's team had submitted new evidence that morning, photos of me following her, recordings of my angry voicemails. They were painting me as the unstable one, the jealous stepmother trying to keep a child from her real mother. I felt the room spin. How had it come to this? I was the one who'd raised Lucy, fed her through feeding tubes, held her through countless hospital stays, and now I was being portrayed as the villain? Jack squeezed my hand, whispered that it would be okay, that the truth would come out, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He was scared too. We filed into the courtroom. The judge was an older woman named Judge Ann Martinez. Martinez. She looked stern but fair. I hoped she was a mother herself, that she'd understand what we'd been through. Becky's lawyer went first, painted a picture of a young mother who'd made mistakes but was ready to make amends, who'd completed parenting classes and therapy, who just wanted a relationship with her daughter. They submitted her certificates, her letters of recommendation, her clean substance tests. Then they attacked us, or rather, me, showed evidence of my harassment, my obsession with keeping Becky away. They even had a statement from someone at my job about my erratic behavior. I wanted to scream that it was all because of Becky, but I had to sit quietly. Our lawyer did his best, presented Lucy's medical records, the documentation of every time Becky had ignored dietary restrictions, the security footage of her stalking our house, the statements from doctors about the importance of consistency in Lucy's care. But Becky's lawyer countered everything, said the medical incidents were accidents, that any mother could make mistakes while learning, that Becky had a right to see her house and child, that we were exaggerating Lucy's condition to keep Becky away. Then came the character witnesses. Becky's therapist testified about her progress. Her parenting class instructor praised her dedication. Even her boss talked about what a responsible employee she was. It was like they were talking about a completely different person. We had witnesses too. Lucy's doctor explained gastroparesis in detail, how serious it was, how one wrong meal could lead to hospitalization. The school principal testified about Becky showing up uninvited. Willie gave his statement about Becky's violent temper, but for every point we made, Becky's team had a counter. The violence was years ago. The school visits were a concerned mother. The medical issues were unfortunate misunderstandings. They made excuses for everything. Then the judge asked about Lucy's letter. Our lawyer submitted it as evidence, but Becky's lawyer immediately objected, said it was clearly coached, that a 9-year-old couldn't write something so detailed. They wanted it thrown out. The judge read it anyway. I watched her face for any sign of emotion, but she remained neutral, professional. She asked if Lucy had been evaluated by a child psychologist. We said no, we hadn't thought it necessary. That was a mistake. Becky's team had thought of it. They'd hired a child psychologist who'd never even met Lucy. He testified that parental alienation was serious, that children could be manipulated into fearing a parent, that Lucy needed both mothers in her life for healthy development. I wanted to throw something. This man who'd never met my daughter was telling the court what she needed. While I'd been there for every moment, every illness, every achievement, but my opinion didn't matter because I wasn't her real mother. The hearing went on for hours. Evidence, counter-evidence, arguments, objections. My head was pounding. Jack looked defeated. Even our lawyer seemed less confident than before. Finally, both sides rested. The judge said she'd review everything and make her decision within a week. A week of not knowing. A week of waiting. A week of hell. As we left the courthouse, Becky approached us. Our lawyer stepped between us, but she just wanted to talk. She said she hoped we could all work together for Lucy's sake, that she didn't want this ugliness anymore. Jack actually looked like he was considering it. I pulled him away, told him it was an act, that she was still manipulating us, but I could see doubt creeping in. What if the judge ordered visitation? We'd have to work with Becky whether we wanted to or not. That week was the longest of my life. Lucy could barely eat from anxiety. I called in sick to work 3 days in a row. Jack and I barely spoke, both lost in our own fears. We were all just waiting for the axe to fall. I spent the time planning. If Becky got visitation, I'd supervise every second, document everything, install recording devices if I had to. I wouldn't let her hurt Lucy again. I also looked into moving, found job listings in other states, checked homeschool requirements, just in case. Jack caught me looking at real estate listings one night. We had another fight. He said I was catastrophizing, that we had to trust the system. I laughed bitterly. The system had failed us at every turn. Why would now be different? But I think he was just as scared as me. I caught him crying in Lucy's room one night, just sitting on her bed holding her stuffed elephant. We held each other and cried together, united in our fear if nothing else. Finally, the call came. The judge had made her decision. We needed to be in court the next morning. Our lawyer couldn't tell us anything over the phone, said we'd find out with everyone else. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Lucy begged to come with us, said she wanted to know right away. We said no, but she insisted, so we brought her. Maybe seeing her would remind the judge what this was really about. The courtroom was packed. Becky's supporters on one side, ours on the other, like some sick wedding. Lucy sat between us, holding both our hands so tight it hurt. I could feel her trembling. Judge Martinez entered and we all stood. She looked tired, like this case had weighed on her too. She started by saying family cases were always difficult, that she had to balance the rights of parents with the best interests of the child. My heart sank. That sounded like she was going to give Becky something. I squeezed Lucy's hand tighter, felt Jack tense beside me. This was it, the moment our lives would change forever. The judge cleared her throat and started reading her decision. She said she'd reviewed all the evidence carefully, that she understood both sides had strong feelings. My stomach was in knots. Just get to the point already. She started with Becky's improvements, said she acknowledged the parenting classes and therapy, that Becky had shown effort to better herself. I wanted to scream. Effort didn't mean she deserved Lucy, but then the judge's tone shifted. She said she couldn't ignore Lucy's medical condition, that gastroparesis required strict dietary management, that the evidence showed Becky had repeatedly ignored medical instructions, even after being explicitly told what Lucy couldn't eat. The judge continued, said the pattern of behavior was concerning. The multiple CPS reports, even if unsubstantiated, showed a vindictive streak. The stalking, the harassment at my workplace, the attempts to manipulate the system, it all painted a picture of someone more interested in winning than in Lucy's well-being. I held my breath. This sounded good, but judges always did this. Built up one side before crushing them with however. I waited for that word, dreaded it. Instead, the judge looked directly at Lucy, asked if she understood what was happening. Lucy nodded, tears streaming down her face. The judge's expression softened. She said Lucy's letter had been very brave, that her voice mattered. Then came the ruling. No visitation for Becky. Not now, not until she could prove she understood the severity of Lucy's condition. The judge ordered Becky to take medical training specific to gastroparesis, to undergo a psychological evaluation, to stop all contact with our family immediately. I nearly collapsed with relief. Jack let out a breath he'd been holding. Lucy buried her face in my shoulder and sobbed. We'd won. We'd actually won. But the judge wasn't done. She issued a restraining order. Becky couldn't come within 500 feet of us, our home, Lucy's school, or my workplace. Any violation would result in immediate arrest. She also ordered Becky to pay our legal fees. Becky's side of the courtroom erupted. Her lawyer objected, saying this was too harsh, that Becky deserved a chance to prove herself. The judge shut him down, said Becky had been given multiple chances and used them to harass us instead. Becky herself stood up, face red with rage, started yelling about her rights as a mother, how we'd poisoned everyone against her. Security moved toward her, but she sat back down, still muttering. The judge warned her that any outbursts would be considered contempt, that she was on thin ice already. Then she addressed us, said she hoped we could find peace now, that Lucy deserved a stable, safe child childhood. We left the courthouse in a daze. Lucy walked between us, holding our hands. For the first time in months, she was smiling, really smiling. We went for ice cream to celebrate. Well, frozen yogurt for Lucy, but it felt like freedom. That night, we actually slept, all of us. No checking security cameras, no jumping at every car door, just peaceful sleep. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in ages. But Becky wasn't done. Of course she wasn't. 3 days later, we got a call from Lucy's school. Someone had called in a bomb threat mentioning Lucy by name. The whole school was evacuated. Police searched everything. They traced the call to a burner phone. No way to prove it was Becky, but we all knew. The restraining order didn't stop her from buying a phone, from making our lives miserable from a distance. We had to keep Lucy home for a week while the school increased security. She missed her friends but understood. We turned it into a fun week. Movie marathons, board games, baking safe recipes together, making the best of a bad situation. Then my boss called, said he'd gotten an anonymous letter accusing me of embezzling, complete with fake documents that looked real enough to require an investigation. I had to go on administrative leave while they sorted it out. I knew it was Becky but couldn't prove it. The investigation took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of no pay. 2 weeks of stress. They cleared me eventually, but the damage was done. My coworkers looked at me differently. Jack's job started getting calls too. Anonymous complaints about his work. Fake reviews online. Someone even made a website with his name claiming he was a fraud. We had to hire a lawyer to get it taken down. But we documented everything. Every incident, every call, every suspicious event. Our lawyer said if we could prove Becky was behind it, she'd go to jail. Restraining order violations were serious. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Remember Nicole, Becky's friend who posted everything online? She reached out to me, said she was done with Becky's drama, that Becky had been bragging about her revenge plans. Nicole had screenshots, texts where Becky detailed her harassment campaign, how she'd bought burner phones, how she'd created fake documents, how she was going to destroy us for keeping Lucy from her. We took everything to the police. They finally had enough to arrest Becky. She was charged with multiple counts of harassment, stalking, and violating a restraining order. Her bail was set high enough that she couldn't pay it. The trial was set for 6 months later. 6 months of peace. Lucy started therapy to deal with everything she'd been through. The therapist said she was remarkably resilient but needed to process the trauma. I went back to work full-time. My boss apologized for doubting me, said I was a valued employee, but I'd already started looking for other jobs. Too much had happened there. I needed a fresh start. Jack and I started marriage counseling too. The stress had nearly broken us. We needed to learn how to be partners again, how to trust each other. The counselor helped us see we'd both been trying to protect Lucy in our own ways. Lucy started thriving again. Her gastroparesis was manageable when she wasn't stressed. She rejoined dance class, made new friends, started smiling and laughing like a normal kid again. We even took a family vacation, just a week at the beach, but it felt like paradise. No looking over our shoulders, no checking security cameras, just building sandcastles and eating safe meals and being together. When Becky's trial came, we were ready. The prosecutor had an airtight case. The evidence was overwhelming. Nicole testified against her former friend. Even Becky's own family testified about her pattern of behavior. Becky tried to play victim one last time, claimed we'd driven her to desperation, that any mother would do the same, but the jury didn't buy it. They found her guilty on all counts. The sentencing was beautiful. 3 years in prison, 5 years probation after that, mandatory psychological treatment, and a permanent restraining order. She'd never be allowed near Lucy again. Becky screamed when they read the sentence, had to be dragged out of court, called us every name in the book, but it didn't matter anymore. She had no power over us. We explained everything to Lucy in age-appropriate terms. She asked if Becky would try to hurt us when she got out. We told her the truth, that Becky would be far away, that we'd always protect her. Life slowly returned to normal. Better than normal, actually. We'd survived the worst and come out stronger. Lucy's health improved dramatically without the constant stress. She even started trying new safe foods. I found a new job at a different bank. Better pay, better hours, better environment. No one there knew about our drama. I could just be good at my job again. Jack got promoted at his company. All those fake complaints had actually made his boss look closer at his work, realized he was undervalued, gave him a raise and a better position. We moved to a new house too. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. No bad memories, no security cameras needed, just a normal suburban home with a swing set in the backyard. Lucy made best friends with a girl named Anne from her new school. They were inseparable, had sleepovers every weekend, did each other's hair, normal kid stuff that she'd missed out on before. For her 10th birthday, we threw a huge party, rented a bounce house, invited her whole class. No drama, no unwanted guests, no fear, just a happy kid celebrating with friends. The only reminder of Becky was the yearly letter from the prison system, updating us on her status, confirming she was still locked up. We filed them away without reading. She was the past. Lucy asked about her once, said a kid at school asked why she had 2 moms but only lived with one. We told her the truth, that Becky had made bad choices, that she wasn't safe to be around. Lucy nodded and never asked again. She had us. She had stability. She had love. That was enough. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if we'd just let Becky have visitation, if we'd tried to work with her. But then I remember Lucy in that hospital bed. Remember the fear in her eyes. We did the right thing. Protected our daughter from someone who would have hurt her. Not out of malice maybe, but out of selfishness and ignorance. The result would have been the same. These days, Lucy's a teenager, manages her gastroparesis like a pro, knows exactly what she can and can't eat, hasn't been hospitalized in years. She's even thinking about becoming a pediatric nutritionist. She still calls me mom. Not stepmom, not bonus mom, just mom. Because that's what I am. The one who stayed, the one who fought, the one who loved her enough to go through hell. Jack and I are solid now, weathered the storm and came out stronger. We joke sometimes about writing a book about everything, but who'd believe it? Sometimes truth really is stranger than fiction. We heard through the grapevine that Becky got out last year, moved to another state, started fresh. Good for her, I guess. As long as she stays away from us. The restraining order is permanent. She tries anything. She goes straight back to prison, but I don't think she will. Prison has a way of making people reconsider their choices. Lucy graduates high school next year, already looking at colleges. Wants to stay close to home though. Says she's not ready to leave her support system. We told her we'd support whatever she decides. She's thinking about reaching out to her half-brother, the one Becky abandoned before her. We found him on social media. He's 22 now. Seems like a good kid despite everything. That's Lucy though. Always thinking about family, about connections. Even after everything she went through, she still has the biggest heart. Guess we did something right. So that's my story. How I took justice into my own hands to protect my stepdaughter. How we survived a birth mother's campaign of terror. How we came out stronger on the other side. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Lucy's safe safety was worth every sleepless night, every legal fee, every moment of fear. She's my daughter in every way that matters. And Becky, she's just a cautionary tale now. A reminder that DNA doesn't make you a parent. Love does. Sacrifice does. Showing up every single day does. We won because we never gave up, never let her break us, never stopped fighting for our family. And now we have the life we always wanted. Peaceful, happy, and Becky free.